Today, this lecture, Sunday morning, I'm here drinking some tea, um, and in the plant room. Um, but today, I thought it was appropriate. It was on my heart to talk about suffering, which I will often talk about, but because the purpose of this podcast, the purpose of these lectures, are to relieve suffering. I think it's necessary. You'll hear me say that it's necessary, but ultimately, we don't need to be attached or cling to the things that cause us suffering. You know, I actually forgot the limes in these, but that's fine. The lime in this tea. Um, so, suffering. Um, all human beings, all life forms suffer. And suffering is a part of the human experience for sure. One of the greatest stories of all time, the story of Jesus Christ, it's sort of is rooted in suffering. You know, when I look at Jesus Christ on a cross, I see I see the horrible beauty of it. You know, the horror of it is the pain that was afflicted upon him by the people that he loved, the people that were close to him, his people. You know, and then the beautiful part about it is his acceptance of it. You know, the ultimate grace that he was sort of displaying to everybody around him. You know, he said they know not what they do. You know, he understood on a level that I don't even think a lot of people really get, that what was done to him was ultimately the human, sort of the human flawed condition, and he understood it on such a level past the ego of the mind, past blaming, past all of the hung up things that we carry as human beings, and he was ultimately in grace, forgiving. It was even past the point of forgiving, because he knew that they didn't know. When you ultimately are at a point where you understand something with such wisdom, there's really no need to forgive, because it's like, what is there to forgive? This person doesn't even know. So I'm past the point of even having to forgive. I'm just go straight into understanding and straight into ultimate grace. You know, so because like, look at it, the man on the cross. The cross is the archetype of suffering. It's a torture instrument. The man on the cross represents humanity. You know, and even in Buddhism, they say wherever you go, there will be dukkha. There will be some form of suffering. You know, there's two ways that you can. They say that there's two ways that you can um, have suffering, and that's one, getting everything you want, and two, getting nothing you want. You know, and to suffer is baked into everything that everything that we do. You go on vacation. First off, you want to go on vacation because you want to get away. I need to get away. I'm working too much. The kids, life, traffic, people, and then you get on vacation. You want to come home, because you're like, oh man, I miss being at home. You go to the supermarket. You stand in lines, uh, there's suffering there. There's a little bit of suffering if you weigh that line. Or the supermarket doesn't have what you does it have what you need? You know, at stoplights. You know, um, I think I read somewhere that we spend like if you take out all the time that we spend waiting at stoplights, it adds up to like I think like a full 2 days or something like that. You know, and you know there's suffering in that. You know, kids suffer. I think the first sort of introduction that uh, a baby has to suffering is when, well, of course, they go through the whole birth process. It's probably really uncomfortable and scary, but when they are suckling for milk from the mom and none of it comes out, you know, no milk comes out, that is probably one of the first biggest forms of suffering for an infant, for a newborn, to suck and to not receive nourishment from your mother, you know. And it is also suffering on the mother too, because the mother feels like she's not enough, you know, that she's not able to give her baby what he or she needs, you know. Another really good example is there's a movie with Brendan Fraser where he meets um, this beautiful woman who happens to be the devil, right? And she grants him, you know, these wishes, you know, and every wish that he, everything that he wishes for turns out to be totally, you know, what he doesn't expect. You know, he wants to be rich and powerful, and he becomes a drug lord, and he wants to be this mega, you know, athlete and that plays basketball. That's a you know, mega star, super athlete, and he has a small dick, you know, and he prays to be this, or he wishes to be this romantic, you know, guy because he thinks that the girl that he loves wants a guy who's like super romantic, and he happens to be like a pushover in a what they would call like a simp, and another one is he wants to be like this profound like intellect and author, and he turns out to be gay, you know. He doesn't want to be gay because he's heterosexual. He's like he's doing everything to be in love with this woman. So it's nothing against homosexuality, but in the context of the story, he is wishing and wanting all these things, and ultimately they turn out to be something else. You know, um, and that's just sort of an example of how um, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, there will be dukkha. That's what Buddha says. There will be dukkha, some form, um, which is a Pali word for suffering. You know, it's baked into everything. You know, and when I started to understand that, because at one point in my life, um, I was very much about wanting things, wanting the next thing. My mind was never satisfied with what I currently had, and I had, you know, I have, and I had a great life, you know, a great, career, money, um, recognition in my field, um, a great family, great kids, um, a great partner, a wonderful partner. God has brought me a wonderful partner, but I would always find something wrong with everything. You know, if I wasn't enough for the thing, or the thing wasn't enough for me, and that caused some suffering, because I was looking for ultimate fulfillment in things and experiences and in people, but there's no really such thing as ultimate fulfillment in anything, you know, especially if you're looking for it to, you're looking for this thing to be to satisfy you. Ultimately, there's nothing that's going to ultimately satisfy you. There's always going to be something that's going to cause you to suffer a little bit. And um, I was never able to be present in the present moment in anything. You know, I was always reaching for more, always wanting more. More money, better, better positions in my career, more accolades. More for my children. Be a better dad, be more of the dad, be more, you know, um, be more Smitty. My nickname is Smitty, so I would always use these. But I was always reaching, pushing, thriving for more, and that caused a great deal of suffering for myself. Um, but what I ultimately realized is that when I stopped reaching for things to be my savior, to, oh, if I just had this thing, everything would be okay. If I just had one more of this, or if I can just make this amount of money, you know, they say people who make $50,000 say that if they made $100,000, they would have everything to realize their dreams. People who make $100,000 say if they had $150,000, that that's what they would need to realize their dreams, and so on and so forth. Um, but when you get there, you realize that you're still unsatisfied. There's still suffering there. You still suffer. So the thing is to do is to not to reduce things um, to a means to an end. You know, to be ultimately present with everything, not to look upon things to satisfy you. Really, you know, to enjoy things. Enjoy the nice car, enjoy the nice house, enjoy the money, but to realize that this is not something that's going to make me happy. You know, there's nothing wrong with you know upgrading and updating your life and striving for more, but you should know that that's not going to be the thing that's going to make you happy. It's not. It'll appear to make you happy at first. You buy the car, you drive the fancy car, and then after a while it becomes, no, not a big deal. It's whatever. You know, you get the big house and it's great, and then now you got to maintain it. And you get all the money, and now you got to figure out what to do with it. Or people want it. People want you for your money. Or people, you got to figure out what to do with your money. You got to deal with taxes and things like that. And all the burdens of having, um, you know, having means. There is a burden to that in some ways, and there is suffering baked into all of that. Um, I think that there is a lot of it is the mind. I come back to the mind a lot. The mind is always looking for more. The mind, if you notice, there's not a lot of things in nature that are like square shaped or that have sharp edges and shapes. That's the mind. The mind makes boxes and shapes and forms. Nature is very much fluid in the shapes that are in nature, but the mind will put things into a box, and you'll think that I need to have more of this and more of that in order, but the mind always wants more. The mind will pull and push you into these thought streams that will will, sort of put you in an illusion that what you have is not enough. You know, the mind will never stop. It'll always say more, 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 more. Or even if it might even do like less, 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 less. If you're a minimalist, it'll say you need less, do less. You know, the mind will feed. It's a never-ending thing, and that is a tool that causes suffering. The other thing that causes a lot of suffering is the narrative that we have, right, created by the mind. There's a situation, and then there's our interpretation of the situation. You know, uh, say um, your car breaks down on a rainy day. It's storming. It's coming down. You could interpret that at, oh man, I got bad luck, or things never go my way, or I gotta change this tire. It's cold. I'm this. I'm that. This is happening. That is happening, and ultimately that creates the suffering. That narrative of your mind. Or you can just get out, bust down, change the tire, and go about your way. You know, you there's the situation, and then there's your thoughts and narrative of the situation, and almost all of the suffering comes from your interpretation of the situation. You know, so what I did is I started to challenge myself to not attach a narrative to things. I just let everything be. You know, something would happen, good, bad, or indifferent, and that's what it would be. I wouldn't attach my narrative to it. And ultimately, the narrative is my past sort of pain, my pain body, right? And then my conditioning based off my past. And that would ultimately create a narrative about the situation that would create suffering for myself. So someone would say something to me, and then I would create a narrative around it and chew on it, and then that created the suffering for me. You know, um, so what I did to eliminate, not to eliminate, to relieve, because there's still a little bit of it there. I think that there still needs to be a little bit of, you still need to be a little bit of a messy bitch, a little bit. In some ways. Not too much that you suffer so much, but that's just kind of like life. You don't want to be, the plan is to be free, not to be too holy, and we didn't come here to just to be like, totally just, just bleak. But I removed the interpretation or the narrative um, of things. Something would happen, and I let it be. Okay, someone would say something, and I would let it be. You know, and that was incredibly liberating. It's liberating. It's freedom. It's I don't have to attach a meaning or a narrative to every single thing that happens, or every single thing that's said to me. I don't have to sort of go down this rabbit hole of, oh, this person said this, and that means that they think this about me, or they, or they think that they're better than me, or they think that I'm incompetent, or this, that, and the third. You know, it was just what they said. You know, and I was in a state of, started to get to a state of not knowing, not even caring to know. You know, I would not know with my entire body. Just I don't know. How can I possibly know what anything means? Something would happen, and I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means at all. And then being okay with not knowing, not trying to, take a stance on it, or trying to develop an interpretation of what someone did or someone said or something that happened. I don't know at all what that means, and I'm okay with it. and that took a huge weight off my shoulder, off my shoulders, and I started to be able to be peaceful, you know. Instead of I would get into a back and forth, not even I would get into a I'm not going back and forth, but someone would say something to me, and instead of rushing into a repair job, defending my ego, my form identity, I would just okay, okay, and just leave it at that. Not even thinking that I'm more holy or more zen than this person. Not even thinking that. Oh, okay, this person is going off. I'm more zen than them. Not even thinking that. Just being okay, you know, and understanding, having given that grace that we talked about. Um, there's a story of a Zen master. He lived in the town, and this young girl, she was about 17 years old, and she got pregnant. And her parents were furious. They're like, "Who did this to you? How did you get pregnant?" And she goes, "It was a Zen master next door. He's the one that impregnated me during our sessions together." So they rush over to him. They're upset after the baby was born, and they go, um, how could you do this thing to our daughter?" And he just says, "Is that so?" Not rushing into a repair job about it. He just says, "Is that so?" And they say, "You take the baby. It's your responsibility." His reputation is ruined. No one goes for him to see him anymore, and he's stuck, with this baby, and he just accepts it, and he gets diapers from the community, and he gets milk, everything, and he raised the baby up, for about a year. And then the year goes by, and the young girl, she finally confessed that it was a young man that was a blacksmith or something. He was the father of the baby, and they go back to the Zen master, and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry. We're so sorry. We accused you." And is that so? And they're like, "Well, we'll take the baby back," and he just gives the baby back, and okay, is that so? And then his reputation is restored, and everybody sort of goes back to him, and it's even people even have a greater um, sort of ideal of him. They respect him even more after the situation, and that's sort of an extreme um, sort of story. I don't even know if that's true or not. I'm sure it probably is, because it's not something that I would sort of take out of the realm of possibility. But it is an extreme example of not rushing into a repair job, not um, you know, not suffering from what someone may do or some interpretation that someone has on you, you know, because that's also a form of suffering. Is that interpretation that someone thinks that you're something, or someone accuses you of something, or you know, and what you can do is I challenge you to, the next time someone accuses you of something, or sometimes the next time someone says something to you at a supermarket, at the gas station, and they're like, "You're," even in traffic, "You're a jerk," they flip you off or whatever. um, I would just say, um, just give it space. Don't rush into a repair job trying to reaffirm your form. you know you know don't think that you're, "Oh, I'm being a bitch if I let this person walk all over me." No, just let it be. you know and there's Jesus Christ said, "Turn the other cheek." you know just allow this thing to give it some space, and you almost become nobody. You become sort of invisible in a sense. Um, sort of become very light. You know, I've been doing this for like about a year, as much as I can. You know, I still believe that you need to, don't let someone do harm to you, or someone just take it. There needs to be a little bit of you standing up for yourself, but you can even do that without getting too involved in the melodrama of it. Like you can, say you have to take legal action against somebody for something. You can take legal action or file a complaint or whatever against someone, but you can do so in a very peaceful way. Allow the system to work for you. You don't get involved in the melodrama of it. You become almost a part of the gallery and the crowd as much as everybody else. You know, and this will give you uh, a tremendous amount of sort of lightness. You'll become very light. You know, um, and people will start to sense it when they're around you. They'll want to be next to you. They'll want to become, and they won't even realize why. You'll have this tremendous amount of lightness about you, and you'll be very pleasant to be around. And people will just be wanting to be near you. They won't even know why. They'll be drawn to you, and it's because you're creating ultimately this space, this spaciousness, and you'll become a space for them to be. Um, like a painting. A painting, there's more space on a painting than there is the painting. Even if the painting is totally full, there's still more space there. There's some areas where there is nothing for sure. You know, in outer space, there's more space in outer space, and there is planets that make up outer space. You know, so um, those are some sort of examples and things to relieve the human condition, which is suffering, which is ultimately inflicted upon you by the mind, you know, um, and I'll leave you with that.